The instructional strategy that I researched and read about was introducing video games in science. My topic, specifically being physics, has a reputation for being quite boring, being very hard, and it's definitely not a favorite subject to many students. So, increasing student motivation is an extremely difficult challenge that I face. So, introducing video games is a great way to combat that because it creates this scaffold instruction that helps students uh, get introduced to vocabulary and theoretical concepts that if they were introduced to in text would just be way too hard for them, especially students who have learning disabilities or students who just struggle with reading in general. Getting introduced to that type of science vocabulary and concepts can just be very disheartening in a textbook. So introduced through a repetitive objective-based game can be a lot more helpful. And there's different levels to games. There's different ways to implement them. You can have games that are just a warm-up activity. You can have games that are an entire lesson or even many lessons, many units. So your primary goal when you're looking for a game to implement is, what is the purpose? Is this game going to be something that you use as a warm-up activity? Or is this something that you're going to use over an entire unit? And is there measurable objectives for both the student? They need to know how they're doing for certain topics. If you have tests coming up, quizzes coming up, it's important to know what you don't know. And it's also important for the teacher to know what the students don't know. So you need some type of way to measure student progress, whether that be actual data from the site or just feedback from your students. What is difficult for students, what's taking them a long time, and what is something you might need to go over again in class. So you need to have some experience with the game also. You need to identify those critical points, especially for games that are spanning several lessons. Where do you need to stop and give background information? Where do you need to stop and go over some stuff? How long is certain objectives going to take? You don't want students just mindlessly spending hours on an objective or on the game. You want them to be able to stop and digest the information that they're practicing. So it's really important that you know how long certain objectives do take and you know how to play the game also. You also need to have students prepared for the game. You can have a very interactive, very engaging, very great program, but if a student doesn't know how to use the menu, go through different functions, or go through different properties, they're really going to struggle with being engaged with the video game. They're going to get frustrated very quickly, and they're not going to learn very much. So giving students tutorial videos, introduction activities, stuff like that to really help students navigate the game, and that way you can get the most out of it. Now, this is something that's actually really interesting to me and something I definitely will be looking into, especially when it comes to schools that might have limited funding. Certain parts of physics is very conceptual, very difficult to do in a lab setting. So to use something like a simulation or a game, something I'm definitely going to be looking into. And that's all I have. Thank you.